Welcome to Fresh Off the Board. Today I'm delighted to chat with Shabad Sopti, a student I've known since 2013-14, and then he went to University of Virginia at Charlottesville in New York, in the US, in Virginia, and studied computer science. He is working in Charlotte. It's a company that we'll get to know more about. And so the first question to you, Shabad, is how was it like settling in at UVA?
I think for me, settling in wasn't first. I think I would start with first semester was not the easiest, and academically also, I had a little bit of a rough patch first semester, not knowing what I was into. One thing that I personally thought UVA could have done better, especially for international students, was the orientation. Like going in, I had no idea what credits were. I had no clue what classes to take. I still remember walking into one of the big halls and they just handed out me a form, and I just randomly had to take a bunch of classes that I wanted to take without any context of what those classes would be. So I just feel they could have set me up better for success. But at the same time, after that, there were also a bunch of resources that I had access to, which I did use to understand what classes I should take, which professors I should take classes with. But after the first semester, things definitely get easier, and it is a lot of fun. I was in the E school. I started computer science. I studied computer science in the engineering school. Um, I
So how was it like to sort of make those decisions early on? Was it tough to seek advising and plan your week, choose your classes?
Early on definitely was much harder. I think, and all the other students from India that went with me, none of them was in the engineering school, and it was only me. So that was kind of hard to figure out. I was basically just felt like I was alone, and so eventually I had to kind of get out of my comfort zone, find people who I could reach out to and ask questions, figure stuff out. I reached out to a few. I got, I think my best friends eventually there were other international students, people from Turkey, people from France, basically people all around the world who were in the same boat as I was, being an international student. So they understood what it felt like. Um, so eventually, I think it's all about finding your own fit at the university. But after the first year, I was lucky. I was able to, get myself involved in a few entrepreneurial clubs. I also started a startup, which I no longer am pursuing. But because of that, I got to know many more people at UVA. I got to interface with professors from the Darden Business School, and I'm lucky to, have formed relationships with a lot of professors from the graduate business school at UVA.
That's interesting because you see that link with computer science students wanting to start the next big startup.
Yep.
And it's obviously the fact that University of Virginia, leafy, suburban, beautiful campus compares to, say, a New York hub of a New York university setting or the mecca of startups like a Berkeley or the Bay Area or Stanford.
Yep.
What is the scene there in
So
entrepreneurship? Of course,
I would
Darden is a great
definitely.
school, but
Darden is a great school, and also it being a college town, it definitely does help. There's a entrepreneurship clubs, people pursuing startups. It's definitely it's become much better at UVA. In fact, like two of my friends just got into YC last year, which was a big deal for them, and it just goes on to show how UVA is helping students from not just the E school, but people from the McIntyre School of Commerce, people from the Batten School of Public Policy, from the engineering school, everyone, all the disciplines coming together to work on different ideas, newer concepts. But one thing that I did notice was there are a lot of startups at UVA specializing in biomedical engineering. That's a big field. And I don't know if it was just me, but I did see a team of biomedical engineering startups at UVA. There was a bunch of them. And yeah. I think the
and
other
go
advantage
ahead.
also. the other advantage was also being right where Dodin is. So there was, I took a few classes at Dodin actually. One of the classes that I took was, I wouldn't really call it a class because it was more of a discussion based class. But essentially, what the class was, founders joined the class in teams, and you meet every week for 2.5 hours, and you just discuss problems. So it was basically a very big mastermind group. And you were taking the class with class. You were taking the class. I was taking the class with other graduate students from Darden, which also gave me, it gives you a lot more insight because people in the graduate school, they're usually around 25, 27. They've had some industry experience. So just getting to understand their perspective was a great experience. And they also benefited from us because being in the e-school, we were the techie guys and we could help them, figure out technical solutions to problems which they never had seen.
Great. So, being a techie, did you go in thinking that's what you want to study? Did you declare your major pretty much in the application?
If I remember correctly, I think I applied for economics. But before actually getting to UVA, I think I changed my major to computer science engineering school.
Okay, and then what was that decision hinged on, and how did you realize that you could be good at this?
Yeah, so I've been coding since I would say I was maybe 12 or 13, but not really coding, basically web dev stuff. And I always saw it as a hobby and not really, as a profession. And I just never thought about, that I could do this for a living. And then one day, my mom's like, Shabad, I think you should do computer science. You enjoy it so much. You love being around computers. I was like, and it just hit me. It made total sense. Why would I do something else if I'm so good? If I enjoy being around computers so much, I enjoy coding, I enjoy programming, and so I would say that was the turning point for me that I decided I'm not going to do economics and going to do computer science.
But how was it like, the rigor of the CS program? Also, it's very competitive to get in. Was it hard to get in?
Get in UVA or get in
Like
the
the
E
pro,
school.
like yeah, UVA from no
I I
to not to UVA, but to the E
but
school
to
and do
switch
CS.
majors, I actually did not have a lot of problems switching to computer science. I don't know what the actual process is like, but I remember I did call up the admissions people at UVA and I told them that this is my problem and this is what I'd like to do. And they were happy to change my major. So I did not have to, take any placement tests or anything like that. So it was a pretty straightforward process for me to
That's
be able
cool.
to
Yeah,
switch
because it's
majors.
very good to hear this because there are so many schools which have capped majors for computer
Yeah.
science
And
in the West Coast.
even UVA in the last few years when I was there, their computer science program has been expanding at an incredible rate. And they've also now, spent a lot of money setting up the new data science school, which I don't know what the status on that is, but it seems like,
Mhm.
it could benefit UVA a lot.
So many students are still confused about different tracks in computer science and what a computer science student actually does study, and how much of it is applicable, say, in the job that you're doing now. Uh, so I know it's like three questions, not just
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
So it could be
yeah.
the web dev, app dev route, the AI, ML route, and
Yeah.
nowadays
So
even AR,
one
VR,
thing
and all kinds of things.
So at UVA, unfortunately or fortunately, we did not have tracks defined. But you could pursue computer science in two ways. One is you could do computer science at the College of Arts and Sciences. And the second being you could do computer science being in the engineering school. Being in the engineering school, you would have to do all the engineering requirements, and that's what I did. Being in the arts and sciences school, you have a lot more freedom to take other electives, being other electives from the Baton School, from Ed McIntyre. It's not because it's not an engineering degree. You don't have to do physics. You don't have to do chemistry. You don't have to do a bunch of math. But I went for the engineering route. I definitely had some difficulty in the beginning with a few engineering courses, chemistry being one of them, but it definitely became easier for me after the first 2 years. which I've heard that third year is supposed to be the hardest. But I think by the time I hit third year, I knew what I was supposed to do and how the system really worked. So it was much easier for me to kind of settle in um, at UVA in my third year, and I would say that's probably when I peaked at UVA. But it was not easy by any means. But at the same time, I would say the faculty is pretty good at teaching what they teaching it in a way that you understand. But when you say that how relevant it is to my job, I would say it's not that relevant, and there could have been other courses that would have made it much more relevant to what I'm doing in the industry. For
So
example,
what
classes.
exactly are you doing now? Yeah, and yeah,
So
and
I'm
how is
yeah,
it
so
connected?
yeah, yeah. So I'm working for a tech consultancy company. It's called Level. It's based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So basically, what Level does, so Level does basically digital transformation for companies. So our tagline, our slogan is basically we level the playing field. So Level base works a lot with banks in Charlotte and other parts of the world. So for example, a bank would come to us. They're like, they'd be like, we need a technical overhaul. A lot of the other banks are, they have mobile apps, they have online banking, they have these X features. We don't know how to compete. So Level goes in, Level does a strategy analysis for a few months, figures out that, okay, this is what we can do, builds out a plan, and then comes the implementation phase. That's where I come in. So we go in, we define requirements, and then eventually build out the product for them.
Right. So it's when you say that you wish you could have learned a few things, what would those be in the computer science program, which could have helped you in this job or even what you know of the industry?
Um, so in retrospect, I would say so you never really learn how to function as a team in college. Today most companies are following this agile principle of working, where you have scrum agile teams defined. And in fact, a lot of us had never worked in a scrum team. We had no idea what we were getting into. We had no idea how do
Interesting.
you get the requirements from clients, how do you um, and even once you have requirements, right, we had no idea how to actually write production ready code. I was never taught that, how to write production ready code, how to deploy applications. I was taught a lot of theory about how things would work, but I was never taught how do you actually build all these applications. For example, I think I took a web dev class at UVA, just to see what it would be like. But whatever I learned was super outdated. I wouldn't put UV at fault here because something like web dev, it's evolving so fast. You wake up every day, there's like five new technologies, and you have to keep learning, keep evolving, and keep practicing all these newer technologies. So it's really hard for a university to keep updating their course every few months. It's basically impossible. So UVA did a decent job teaching you the fundamentals, which could be applied to all these different technologies. But at the same time, what really helped me was doing a bunch of side projects, getting some certifications on the side, um, just keep reading about newer and newer technologies, and just keep basically I kept upskilling. I think that was what really helped me in getting a job and performing.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super. But I like the word agile, and it's, there are books written on this, there are all kinds of things. So, what kind of training did you get when you sort of moved into workforce and had to, now, especially with distributed work, team
Yeah.
members and under lockdown or sheltered in place? How does it work? What is the concept of agile?
So agile is nothing. You basically work in sprints, and the goal of each sprint is that after a sprint, you basically have a shippable product. So you have a PM, a project manager on board, who basically runs the team and does all the agile ceremonies. So in agile, you also have a bunch of ceremonies. You have grooming, you have planning. These are basically when you you basically build tickets from the requirements that you have gathered. So one ticket could be build a search feature for filtering for this app, right? And then you estimate it. You say, okay, this ticket is a 5 pointer ticket. When I say a 5 pointer ticket doesn't really mean it's going to take 5 days or 7 days. That's so each that's based on how long the sprint would be. So a sprint could be anywhere from 1 day to 4 weeks. And that usually depends on the length of the project, the size of the team, and what people are comfortable with working on. But and then you have other ceremonies like retrospective, where the entire team gets together on a board and they basically talk about what went wrong this sprint, what could we have done better, what went well for us, what do we need to change and going into the next sprint. So it just kind of helps the team. And also, I forgot the main part of it is you have a stand-up meeting every day, every morning. So for my team, we meet every morning at 9:30 a.m. We meet for just 15 minutes. It's you don't talk about anything else, but just a quick update on what you did, what's your plan for today, and do you have any blockers? So if you have any blockers, the project manager steps in and helps you figure out how to resolve the blockers.
Fantastic. That's a great summary. In fact, this will be very useful for high schools as well because it's kind of online and there's
Absolutely. And
not just high schools, any kind of education setup. Do you see changes in UVA with this lockdown announcement? And what do you think of the COVID era education and higher education plans?
I think it's in for a big, you know, change. And I would say it was coming. I think the lockdown just kind of forced it. And now it's just gonna happen the lockdown basically acted as a catalyst to kind of change the way education works. Um, I I honestly don't know how it's gonna change, but it's definitely, it has to move online. But at the same time, I'm not a fan of remote education because coming to the US, it was not just for, education. It was for the culture. It was for understanding how things work here, getting the experience of studying in an international American college and getting to be friends with people from all over the world, understanding their cultures, making so many, friends from different places all around the world. I mean, today I go to Europe, I have 5 friends there. I can just call up and crash at theirs. I go to Latin America, I have a bunch of friends there. So it's I don't know how you would get the same culture and the social life if everything goes online or remote. But at the same time, online classes do have a benefit that you could watch them at your own pace, and it's more on demand compared to you have to be in the lecture hall by 8 a.m. every morning.
Great. So I'm going to switch gears and talk about get answers from you in kind of rapid fire succession. If you were to list three influencers, could be mentors you know, could be people you follow, or authors and even entrepreneurs and so on and so forth, who would be the three?
Wow. I would say the first one is definitely Satya Nadella. I've been really inspired by his work that he's done at Microsoft. I have not read his book. I'm actually starting to read his book now. It's called Hit Refresh, and it's basically about how we transformed the work culture around Microsoft after Steve Ballmer exited and he became CEO. Um, so Steve, all right. Um, the second would be probably, I don't want to name all tech people. That's just um
It doesn't
wow, you
matter.
stumped
Go
me
ahead.
with that one.
Even tech or even people you follow, like a YouTube channel or anything, could be good too.
Yeah. So the first one is definitely Satya Nadella. The second one, wow, is probably my mentor at UVA. My advisor. He was actually on the advisory board for my startups there. His name was Damon DeVito. So he was the one that taught me that class at Darden, and I'm still in touch with him. I call him up at least once a month. But what he really taught me is how do you successfully set up a business with how do you bootstrap a business from with almost nothing, and how do you basically go from 0 to 1.
Okay, so then Peter Thiel too, maybe.
Peter Thiel too, maybe. Yeah, that is a fantastic book.
Controversial,
Um,
but yes,
Controversial but fantastic. It was a good book. Um,
definitely.
and I
Super. So
would
I think
say,
we can always
all right,
weave in the third one in your
all
answers,
right,
or if you
yeah.
have something ready, you're very good.
If I
Uh,
think about someone, I'll
sure, sure, sure. So if you were to describe three strengths Shabad Sopti brings, not to work, but in life in general, and the way you are as a person, or your skills, strengths, even vulnerabilities in terms of being a
yeah.
human.
You
But
really
what
love the
three
number
strengths
three,
do you
don't
bring?
you? But I would say the first thing that I really enjoy is learning. I think that's one of my biggest strengths. Learn, and I just try to, be keep upskilling myself in newer things, and because of that, I'm able to grasp newer frameworks, newer technologies. For example, my company, just put me on a completely new project. I had no idea what the tech stack was, but I was able to figure out how to use the tech stack and how to build an application successfully using that particular tech stack. So yeah, I would say learning, the ability to grasp something really quick, and third being, the third would probably be my weakness, which is probably me leaning towards being overconfident. Um, it's sometimes it just shows me, like, for example, seeing senior engineers, seeing senior consultants at my company, right? I going into work, I was like, I'm joining as an associate. I should probably join as a senior consultant. But going in there, talking to the senior consultants, you realize that, wow, there's so much more to learn right now.
Super. So what is this overconfident Shabad planning next? Do you have a sort of a goal in mind, either grad school or just working
That's
in?
a very that's a very good question. So I haven't really thought about that yet. I've been working for about, what, 10 months now. I started in July, so yeah, somewhere around 10 months. But I would say I would do want to work for another 2 or 3 years. Figure out what I would really want to do, and also how the world changes. See what changes the virus, the lockdown brings, and then maybe go from there.
Hmm. Now we go back to your high school years. I know when you moved to Sriram School and the IB and the new environment, there was always this anxiety I could see that settling in the curriculum, not grappling with everything that's being taught or the way it's being taught. What message would you have for high school students who are like just struggling to sort of grapple with all the pressures of making a mark in a new place and also then settling in with their academics, which is, say, different from what they've been doing, and then also the whole college application and the pressure which the yourself sort of induced competition and all of that. So what it's awkward years, it's stressful. What message
Yeah,
would you have for high school kids?
I would say just I would say just keep going. I mean, things are hard. The SATs, all of that is just it's a really painful process. But I would say just something that you have to do. Because something like the SATs, right? I personally believe it really doesn't go on to show IQ or anything like that. It's a totally hackable process. It's a learnable process. It's something you can learn how to crack. It's something you can learn how to get a good score on the SATs. It doesn't really show where you really stand. So if I really struggled with the SATs. I remember it was a really painful process for me, but I just didn't let myself get bogged down by by certain failures and while taking the SATs, for example. Because I just, at the end of the day, in retrospect, I can say that I realized that it really doesn't. It's, as I said, it's a totally hackable process. Doesn't really mean anything. But it's just something you have to do at the end of the day. And I just took my GREs. The same goes for the GREs or anything like that. Um, yeah.
Great. Go ahead. Anything else?
Also
Any
about
message for them?
Also about things like settling in. I mean, for me, it was definitely a hard process going from CBSE to IB, and more so from a school that I had been at for like 12 years, and then switching gears to a completely new school, completely new friend group. That was not the easiest of the things, but it also did give me it gave me a lot more. I would say it expanded my horizons quite a lot because I got to meet so many more new people, a completely different way of teaching. I didn't agree with a lot of things back then, but in retrospect, it most of the things that the IB taught me did make sense.
Great. So finally, I think uh, the students who've just graduated from college, what do you think if you have some message for them in terms of learning from situations which are out of your control, dealing with uncertainty, and if you have anecdotes from your life, if you had situations, maybe you know starting and then shutting down the startup or whatever. I mean, I don't know
Yeah, I
what
mean,
experiences you had.
absolutely. I think there
Go
is.
ahead.
I think there's a point in life. I mean, there's a point when you graduate, and when you're about to graduate. I definitely hit this stage where I was just extremely uncertain about what I want to do next. I didn't know whether I wanted to go to grad school, whether I wanted to get into the industry. I took my GREs, but I just didn't want to apply to grad school. And then suddenly I had an offer come up from this from level. I didn't even recruit because back of my head I was like, okay, I was going to go to grad school. But suddenly this opportunity came up on the table, and I went in. I did my interview, and it turned out I really liked the company. So it was. I would say, I would say, uncertainty in a way. Learn how to be excited by uncertainty, because it's in a way it's kind of fun, it's adventurous, it's exciting not knowing what the next page will be. But at the same time, don't let don't let it bother you. I would say keep working, keep upskilling. I would say that's, even right now with whatever's going on, I would definitely say keep upskilling. In fact, one of my friends messaged me the other day. He lost his internship because of the pandemic, and I think he had an internship at EVI or something like that. And he's like, I don't know what to do now. I'm a sophomore. I'm about to graduate next year. I need a job, and this was my way to get a job in the US. So my advice to people in that boat would be just upskill, maybe get a few certifications, try to get some more side projects on your GitHub, because now that I'm in the industry, when I'm hiring people, I don't look at their GPAs. I don't look at I basically pay a lot of attention to their side projects, to the way they code, their coding, the coding practices they follow, the certifications they have. It goes on to show if the student went out of their way to learn something new and upskill themselves.
That's great. Yeah, I think with that, we'd like to thank you, Shabad, for this fascinating chat and sharing so many aspects of your life. I'm sure viewers, listeners would have questions, and I'll send them your way. So
Absolutely.
looking forward to following your life in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arjun.